The shocking thing that I always like to say is the book was written in 30 days. 15 days in August and December of 2015. My book, Ghost of, looks pretty intensely at individual and also familial grief. And in kind of investigating a trauma that happens to a member of the family, it also looks at the parents of that brother who is no longer here because the brother has committed suicide. I looked at my parents and looked at their childhood and what did they endure in terms of their own childhoods, living through the Vietnam War and then escaping the Vietnam War. And that's kind of really at the end of their teenage years. And then they come to the United States, they meet each other, they marry, they don't talk about the past, and they have children. But all the silence about the traumas that they've seen and that they lived through really kind of seeps through the everyday of their own family, my parents, my family. And it really kind of is this like silence that is really oppressive and kind of terrible. And I found in the aftermath of my brother's death, really kind of talking about it openly, we were able to. And I wonder if it's that plate tectonic thing where everything's kind of messy and everything's out there. There's something new that I did with the book, and it wasn't intentional. I wasn't thinking about a book as I was doing it. It was around the first anniversary of my brother's death. So my brother died in December of 2014. 2 years before that, in the middle of the night, he went through the halls of the house and removed the family portraits from the frame, each frame, and with an X-Acto knife and sliced his picture out and then put all the pictures back up. So it was a very quiet violence. It wasn't, nothing was broken, right? And he didn't take all the pictures. He just took what he felt was his, which was his own face, his own body. And he, I mean, the big thing is like, I don't feel part of this family, or I don't want to be part of this family. Either way, he reclaimed what he felt was his. And my parents didn't notice it right away when they woke up, and it kind of took them a while when they were going through the house and they started to see these kind of white voids within the frames. They didn't talk to him about it. He was living at home. They called me, and I was living in New York at the time. And I tried to talk to my brother. I was, it's really concerning when somebody removes themselves. It's usually kind of a warning sign for suicidal ideation. And I tried to reach out to him, and I can go over all of those emails and the voicemails that I left, but really I wasn't able to communicate with him. He just kind of was very angry. So the pictures and what they represent and the kind of our inability to talk to each other and to talk about what happened, because we also don't talk about mental illness in my family, and we still don't. We're not able to address that. It's so taboo, let alone like going to get therapy for mental illness. And so those pictures hung up for the next 2 years until my brother's death. And they also hung up after his death, which is to say it was terrible to come home and to walk those halls. But my parents, my sister, they lived in that. I don't know if they felt like they couldn't touch them or what. And it was really the first anniversary. It was like, no, I don't want to live like this anymore. I miss him, and it's terrible. And I'm also like really enraged at kind of this violence that he's done, right, to the family home by taking his picture out, but also like from the family by removing himself. And so I asked my sister to scan the images. And I told her, I was like, I want to do something to kind of reclaim and to like repair or restore, but I don't want to fill in recreate the brother that's not there. I'm not looking to just kind of color it in that way. And it was something else to just sit and look at these scanned images, blown up on the computer screen. And there was this funny accident that happened. So, I would cut and paste, or I'd insert the image into a word processor, but I accidentally did it twice. And when you paste something twice, it ghosts that image, because it doesn't do it exactly on top of it. It does it maybe I don't know, 3 degrees to the right. And it was this kind of creepy, eerie, ghostly reverberation visually. And I was like, ooh, I like that. I like that it was a kind of slight deviation of the actual image, and it felt creepy and felt ghostly. And I don't know, something about being in that space. I was like, all right, I'm just going to start typing in a text box in that white space, and outpoured so many things I hadn't been able to access. I hadn't been able to really feel very much. I felt odd because I didn't cry at the funeral. I just felt so, I don't know, it was a very out-of-body experience, the first 6 months after my brother died. And there was something about working with that artifact that he left behind that I really felt that loss. And I really felt a kind of yearning for him, and not just for him where he is now, which is the afterlife, but also our childhood and our memories, kind of really traveling through time in that way. And so I didn't stop because it's such a small box to fill in that white space. And I said, well, okay, what about like the 7-year-old me or the 35-year-old version of my mother? Like my family who is still alive, but those versions of us don't remain, like those are so much younger. That was before all the things that would happen to us. What about us who are still there? What if I could also have the text honor that space around what is missing? And so to also kind of think about the supportive system that holds that white space together. And so then I started to do these triptychs. And because I was doing this marathon of writing poems, I was like, I will do this with all of the images because I have a lack of other idea of what to do with. And, I could just throw them all away. Nobody has to know about what I was doing. But it really unleashed just like so many sentiments that I don't think anybody could have even asked me about. It shocked me, some of the things I think that I wrote. And so the use of image, I think, was really disruptive in my normal process, in my creative process. Unfortunately, I wouldn't have thought to use an image in poetry. Like without this kind of impetus, I wouldn't have just like, okay, I'm going to take a photograph and work with it. But I'm so happy it did, because to think, of course, language, the alphabet, every letter is an image, right? And every mark we make with ink on the page is a form of ideograph. And so why not allow for poems as text, right? Concrete poetry to be a kind of image making as well, in addition to what is contained in it. I only write in the summer and in the winters, and I've been doing that for about 8 years now, only because I teach during the academic year, and I don't have time because I obsess about my students when I'm teaching, and so that just really leaves the two big breaks. But it's quite regimented. I mean, it's not like I don't think about writing. I'm spending all that time kind of gestating, preparing, and reading. So I only write in these 15-day intervals. I'm trying to write a poem a day. Well, I do write a poem a day, but one that's publishable, which is really excruciatingly hard. And what the beauty of it is, after the first few days, you think you've written some really wonderful poems, and then you're like, shit, I have nothing left. That's it. You kind of feel like you've hit rock bottom. That's the best place to be, I think, because that's when the creativity really sparks and you try new things, because you have to produce something for that day. And this process has been so fruitful in terms of ingenuous forms, thinking about material in a different way, just like the desperation and the pressure involved in all of it, I think really created the right environment for me emotionally and also creatively. So I'll write in these compressed periods, and I usually wait about 4 months until I go back. And I only go back to the work when I don't remember having written it anymore. So I don't remember where it came from, what engendered it, and I can just really go and be really kind of surgical without feeling. But I mean, of course I do have feeling, but I'm not like, oh no, I just made this thing and I worked so hard. It's more of, no, that isn't doing it. I think poetry is relevant. I can speak to me in a way that I see myself reflected and refracted now in the books that I read and in the journals that I read. And that most certainly was not the case when I was an undergrad, or even really fully when I was a graduate student, which is to say, it was a lot of kind of conservative stuff that like I would study as an English major or in an English department as a literature student, which is a lot of white male poetry about kind of the traditional themes. And that's not a kind of background ethnically or even culturally that I'm fully steeped in or immersed in. But what I'm seeing happening today is so vibrant. I'm seeing foreign languages. I'm seeing so many stories within the Vietnamese American diaspora, right? And I'm seeing stories that just hadn't been talked about, but stories that I knew from family members or friends. And I'm seeing them now kind of celebrated or examined or just like talked about openly in a way that is really kind of wonderful and rich. And so I've been so excited about that. So that's content wise, but also formally speaking. I'm also now seeing so many image text books. I'm seeing books that also do a lot of sound work. I'm seeing a lot more multidisciplinary poets. So I think it's really exciting to kind of really just seize whatever medium one wants to work in and just to kind of go about it with a kind of fearlessness that I hadn't been seen before. Like there's less permissions being asked and it's more of like, well, this is what I'm doing now versus am I allowed to do this? Like, will they publish it if it has pictures, you know? And I think that there's such an excitement about it. I've been lucky enough to now visit lots of different undergraduate institutions and to talk with undergraduate students who have read my book. And they're like, I didn't know one could do this. And I was like, yeah, whatever you want to do, you should do it. Go for it. Why not? What are the stakes? Right? And they're like, yeah, I guess so. And I think that it's so wonderful that that's the kind of scene that we have going on today.